Good morning, Ian Burnett. Back on work in the 65 Mustang, where we're actually modifying the original interior to fit around our mini tubs. So what we've done is we've added some fiberglass to make the panels fit. That worked out great. We've shortened up all the interior pieces. 65 Mustang Fastback has a unique seat in that it folds. We thought it'd be really cool if we made that fold, and we're finding out some of the issues as we put it together. Because of the mini tubs and the rear cross member, it actually raised some of the panels. What that did is change the geometry of the hinges, and what I'm going to do now is explain to Hatcher what I'm thinking of how we have to modify the hinges. In the Fastback, we have a fixed shelf that actually raised up about 1.5 inches because of the rear cross member. And again, that's what changed the geometry of the seat. The seat sits in this position and actually folds flat, as well as once it folds up, it creates two bucket back seats. That's where we ran into our issue with the hinge. The stock location to move and make this work, because I raised this panel, made the gap between the seat and the shelf considerable. Didn't look good, not show car quality. So what we're going to do is explain to Hatcher how we're going to modify the hinges. He and I are going to do that. So Hatcher and I have moved over here to our little test prop. We're going to do a little demonstration here of what I'm thinking about how I'm going to change the geometry of the hinge. You're going to have to follow along a little bit because it's a little hard to show you exactly what I've got going here. But this piece of paper represents the fixed shelf, a side view of it, and this piece of paper represents a cutaway of the back seat. The back seat presently, in its stock form, has the hinge down where my finger is. And the problem is, if I show Hatcher how to rotate that, what's going to happen is, as he rotated it, they overlapped. Well, obviously we can't have two solid pieces occupying the same space at the same time. So we have to figure out a way of relocating the hinge so that these two pieces of paper don't touch here. So Hatcher, we obviously can't use this location, so what I'm going to do is a quick test. We're going to move the hinge location up to here, which is the center of the seat bracket, and we've got a very narrow gap there. And what you're going to find is it still does overlap, but it doesn't overlap near as much. Can you see that? And as we turn it further and get the seat into the seat location, it's at a slight angle for comfort. We still have a little bit of overlap. So if we take our pointer out and we move the seat just a little bit forward, and we've created a little bit of a gap in there, but that gap is probably perfectly acceptable. Now if we rotate the seat slowly, you can see that it doesn't touch. And it's also going to be able to rotate into its upright position without touching. I think we found our solution. So what we're going to have to do is take the original hinges and move the pivot point. That's what we're going to do now. Ready? So here's the hinge in the stock configuration. It's actually bolted to the back of the moving seat, and you can see where the pivot is. Our goal is to move this pivot down here, and I've got a second hinge that Hatcher and I have been working on, and we've actually moved the pivot. We have one more piece to weld in place, and we'll have it together. This little piece of tubing I welded in first to keep the two plates in alignment as I cut the original part of the hinge pivot off. Here we are with the seat configuration and one of the hinges bolted to the seat. This hinge hasn't been modified, and you can see the pivot is actually below the seat. Our goal is to modify this hinge to get the pivot moved forward and up around this chrome piece. That'll allow the hinge and the seat to rotate as we need it. Hatcher and I have worked on this one already. This is for the other side. Our first goal was to put a piece of tubing in there just so we could keep the two plates aligned. It will be cut off in just a few minutes. We've already lowered the pivot on the one side. We have one more piece to weld in, a little extension, and we'll do that in just a minute. I'll show you this on the other side, and you can see the relocation point of that pivot. This is the hinge that Hatcher and I have modified already. As you can see, the pivot is now much higher on the seat and in line with the chrome trim on the seat. We have the one piece to weld back in, which is our extension. That's how far we actually move the pivot, and that piece will fit there. Hatcher and I are going to go weld that now. We'll show you when it's done. We'll also modify the other hinge, and we'll put the seat in the car, and we'll see how it works. What we're doing now is Hatcher's just tacked this piece in place that we talked about a little earlier, and I just want to bring one of the points up just to show and reiterate to Hatcher why we put a taper on this. Notice that we tapered not only the old piece of the hinge, but the new bracket. What we've done is so that when we weld that, we need to grind this smooth so it's flat and it doesn't rub on the upholstery. But because we've tapered it, our weld will go in there. It'll be a nice solid weld. There's actually a lot of weight that's going to be put on this hinge, because you remember when we talked about levers, the further out you get, the more pressure it puts on it. So this is very close to the hinge pin, and there'll be actually a lot of pressure on this one weld. And because it's a butt weld, we want to make sure it's good and strong. Got that? Yep. Okay, let's weld it. Pretty good. Nice weld. Good penetration. Let's move it, get you in a better location. You got to be able to see the groove. You got to get it in the groove. This is really a critical weld. Worked out just perfect. Okay, not done. We got one more. Let's clip this. You see that you've got a weld right above it. Can you see where those two pieces come together? Very good, Hatcher. Your welds are turning out really nice. Proud of you. So Hatcher, now we've welded it, we're going to do a little grinding. Let me grind the first one, you can grind the other two. We're going to make this nice and smooth because it's a part that's going to be close to the upholstery, and we don't want anything to catch on the upholstery when it's finished. You ready? Back up just a bit. And that's all that takes. Being that you put a V cut in there, it welded really nicely. We've got plenty of penetration and plenty of strength in there. Good job.
Hatcher here. Right now we did this on one hinge for the seat, and we moved the pivot down, and this one's all finished and touched up. Right now Ian over there is working on the next hinge so that it will be down where the chrome panel is. I've learned how to move something down by grinding it, cutting it, and then welding it. And I've learned that sometimes you just have to go the hard way instead of trying to just make it easy. The experience has been actually very fun because I've got to grind off the parts and then weld them back on and see how, and we're gonna test and see if the seat will fit how we're thinking it will fit by moving the hinges, the pivot point down on both sides so it will not hit the panel. My favorite part so far has probably been using the paper and all that and trying to figure out what we're gonna do with it so that we can weld and grind it together.
Kevin Keep here with Rebuilding Generations. I'm here with Dave. Dave, we appreciate you coming out here.
My pleasure.
Dave came all the way from Lake Havasu City, Arizona. He was on his vacation this summer, stopped by to hang out with us for about a week, and we're getting everything sanded down here and getting everything ready to go.
I'm glad to help.
Well, we appreciate it. And so what we have here is I'm working on, this is a computer cover for the actual computer system for the Coyote motor. The kids fabricated this together, they welded it up. We took it to a guy locally here that helped us make some louvers in it. And it's the little touches that we feel make a difference in the car. So I was here explaining to Hatcher that 80% of your work when painting a car is in preparation. every little thing you do with preparation on the paint. Here we have a relatively flat panel with some louvers in it. So I'm taking my time and going through this with a couple of different sandpapers and some Scotch-Brite, making sure that everything is perfectly smooth. Any little dimples that are in here are gone. That once it's painted, you know, you really can't go back to it. 80% is in the prep, 10% is actually painting the car. The other 10% is in when you're doing the color sand and buff and the thing that's on there. Debatable on each painter. That was just my interpretation of it, showing them that, emphasizing the fact that preparation is everything. This paint job is only going to be as good as our prep work was on getting this car ready to actually spray the color. So we've got most of the car sanded down. We've Scotch-Brited it. We've got all the little rough areas from the primer. Neil's gonna be here on Monday, priming every little part up that we need to get done. And we'll be shooting the car, hopefully in paint, on Tuesday. So stay tuned, watch how this car comes along.
So Hatcher and I have now finished welding up the hinges. We've actually mounted them to the back of the seat, and we put the shelf in just temporarily. Nothing's aligned yet, but we want to see, this will be the first time we're closing it. So let's see if the hinges work, okay? You ready? That looks pretty successful to me. Good job, Hatcher. Now we have the seat in its original position without the upholstery. It's in the up position. This is where you could sit in the back of the seat. And the idea behind the Fastback and this feature is this lays down. This piece flops over. And it gives you a flat panel. Not upholstered yet, we'll have carpeting on it, we'll do some adjustments, tighten all the bolts and everything, but it's going to work just like it used to back in 1965. Pretty proud of you, Hatcher, you did a good job. Thank you.
Hatcher here. I thought that at the beginning it was really cool still to have the hinges work, but now since the test is done, we actually got it to work. And I think that was really cool. And I think that we did a great job on everything. I thought the best part was fitting it in and figuring out what we were going to do and how we were going to fit it. And it was really fun. I thought the welding was really, really fun and the grinding so that it would fit right, like it used to in 1965. Thank you.
Just an interesting point, as you try to fit these, you're always running into issues. Change one thing, it affects something else. One of the things that affected when we went to put this back in place, and all you Mustang enthusiasts will note that this piece of molding used to go all the way across. What happened is we had to build this piece of molding because now we raised the tunnel about 2.5 inches, and this hit the tunnel. So we had to relieve it to fit the tunnel, and so it laid flat. You'll also see the welds right down the middle. Because we mini tubbed this, all the interior panels are moved in, and we had to section all these pieces, including the chrome. We're actually going to send it out to powder coat, so you'll never know that. And once it's upholstered, you'll never see any of that. So far, we're really proud of the kids and how well this has turned out.